Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Okay, so this evening I received a request to use the theme of the 7 factors for awakening for the Dhamma talk. So, rare occasion when I might have some kind of clear theme going. And this, in Pali, Bojjhanga, and so 7 factors for awakening, 7 factors of awakening. It has a, say, equally kind of valid in the sense of these are qualities that are cultivated for laying the foundation for the arising of awakening, and there are also, say, factors which are characteristic of awakening. So it's an interesting way of, because I don't think it's, one is absolutely, say, valid and the other is invalid. Those are, it works both ways, and it's something that is familiar to us here in particular, because of course, it comes up through the discourses, through the teachings of the Buddha in many places. But say for us here at Abhayagiri, and there is when we do the chant of the Anapanasati Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness of breathing, then there's in the beginning of it, it's sort of the cultivation of mindfulness of breathing. It says when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. When the 4 foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they fulfill the 7 factors of awakening. When the 7 factors of awakening are developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance. So it's a these are part of the integral part of the cultivation of the mind, developing of this path of practice, and the 7 factors for awakening are, the first one being mindfulness, second one being investigation of Dhamma, so Dhamma Vichaya, which is investigation, contemplation of aspects of Dhamma, but then also this contemplation of experience of things, contemplation of whatever we're experiencing. So it has a broad meaning, Dhamma. And then the third factor is the virya, which is effort, application of energy. Fourth factor is piti, which is joy, or sometimes translated as rapture, but that feels a bit strong. But it's also, they say, maybe as Ajahn Kurundamba, one day we were talking, I remember him saying, and in thinking in terms of enwrapped, and so that one is enwrapped, one is uplifted and engaged in some. So that's say piti has that quality of being able to bring a sense of joy and well-being and engaging. The fifth quality is it's called pasati, which is tranquility, serenity, kind of an ease of body and mind. Sixth quality is samadhi, which composure is a good word. I mean, the common word is concentration, which if anybody's listened to my Dhamma talks, well, it's a word I don't like, but it's in common parlance. But composure, the mind that's settled, mind that's well established, firmly established, solid. Those are good descriptions of samadhi. And the last factor is equanimity, upekkha, which is like equanimity, balance, and that sense of, I think it's important to, especially with this quality of equanimity, sometimes it's misunderstood, misrepresented as not actually experiencing and responding to the both the external world and the internal world. And there's an equipoise is a good word. So that sense. So these qualities are I mean, one can think of it in terms of say a linear progression. Say beginning with mindfulness, and then one builds on the mindfulness, and one reflects, investigates, and contemplates one's experience, contemplates from a perspective of Dhamma, and then that has the effect, or one has to, or say requires an application of effort, putting forth of energy, and with that there'll be like an arising of piti, of joy, of well-being, and then as that matures, it settles into more of a tranquility and serenity and ease of body and mind, and as that again matures, there is a deep composing of the mind, deep settling, stability of the mind, and clarity. That sense of samadhi, for samadhi to be, say, fulfilling, coming to fruition. And there's both a settling, but there's also a clarity that's there. And then the sense of, with that clarity and that stability, then one seeing things in a true nature and equanimity, that kind of, it's not reactive, but it's not reactive because it's knowing and seeing things clearly. It's not just following impulses of habit. So then this sense of equanimity, equipoise. So one can see it in terms of a linear progression, but then also one can look at it as a cyclical thing, in the sense of as one develops that, then with that equanimity, this progression, with that equanimity, it feeds back into the mindfulness, strengthens the mindfulness, strengthens the awareness, and then creates a loop that then enhances the investigation of Dhamma, and enhances that sense of contemplation, reflection. And that, because that's one of the, say, one of the qualities that the Buddha points to, that is absolutely essential for this path of practice leading to the end of suffering, is yoniso manasikara, which is appropriate attention, considered reflection. There's many different translations for this quality of yoniso manasikara, but that sense of reflection, investigation, contemplation, directing attention in a skillful way is essential. So it's seen as, so that's a factor that is, say, these different factors are supporting this increased directing of attention in an appropriate way, so that it aligns with Dhamma. There's another quality that the Buddha speaks of that is integral to the say awakening, in the sense of one of the factors of stream entry is practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. So that you start seeing how these qualities really mesh together. Or say, in that, as I read in when mindfulness of breathing is cultivated, developed, it brings four foundations of mindfulness to fruition. When the four foundations of mindfulness are cultivated, it brings the seven factors of awakening. The seven factors of awakening, it brings clear knowing and release. So these are these different teachings and different practices and different perspectives are not they're not compartmentalized. They work together. They function together, and that's that's an important piece of the our cultivation and development, is really starting to see how these things work together, how there's a seamless kind of integration of the practice and the teachings, for the arising of freedom from dukkha. And these, of course, these 7 factors awakening are an important piece. So there's that sense of the, say, like as a cycle that feeds into and strengthens that process. There's also a way that the Buddha approaches the 7 factors for awakening with the as one's working with the mind, so that in meditation or not, but oftentimes in meditation, what are we doing? We inevitably there's going to be times when the mind's just kind of sluggish and dull, and the Buddha said, well, it's when the mind is sluggish and dull, then that's not the time to put all one's attention onto, say, like tranquility, composure, equanimity, because that, he said, it compares it to a fire. And he said it's like having a small fire that you then throw on green branches, bunch of green leaves, and throw dust on it, and it just puts the fire out. So that's a time to where one applies things that are more of an active quality. So like the contemplation of the Dhammas, contemplation of experience, investigation, an active investigation. They putting forth effort, lifting up energy, turning attention to what is it that brings kind of joy and delight in the practice, in the Dhamma. Then the mind, and the Buddha said, it's like if you've got a small fire and then you put on dry branches, dry wood, put on dry leaves, and it starts up. So that just knowing how to balance the mind. And similarly, if one is feeling restless, and there's a restless energy that's going on. This kind of state of the mind is a bit agitated already. It's a bit, it's kind of agitated and restless, and then that's when one. If you take that and then turn it to investigation of Dhamma, put more energy into it, and ramp up the kind of rapture and delight, then the mind explodes. It goes all over the place. It's really not helpful. It's not. There needs to be a certain settling quality. And of course, then the Buddha uses that. It's like having a big bonfire going already, and then you just throw more dry fuel on, and it starts to be a raging inferno. It's not really can't really channel it for much purpose. It's too much. So but that's the time to when there is that. Restless energy, or so it's kind of agitated, and then you want to consciously direct attention to the balancing quality of tranquility, of settling, of serenity, of evenness, of equanimity, composing. So that those the awakening factors of passaddhi, of samadhi, of upekkha, those are really appropriate. So this you're always thinking in terms of and there's themes that we look at in terms that cover our whole practice, and balance is always one of them. Where you're always having to tune into what is the balance that's needed, and of course this is where in these speaking of these qualities, and the Buddha is looking, okay, these three kind of active factors, these three kind of passive factors, but he says mindfulness is always appropriate. Mindfulness is always needed. So it's that is being, it's necessary. But that there's this balancing quality that we're having to pay attention to. And it's kind of like in the Thai language, how Ajahn Chah would speak of the Dhamma. It says, it's like Dhamma ku kompodi. It's sort of like it's like the Dhamma is kind of this just right quality, this quality of just right, and so this sense of balance, and we have to tune into that, because sometimes it's like one wants to be, say, circumspect in terms of our precepts, and one needs to be have a real strong integrity, but it needs to be just right in the sense of one, just not sloppy or laxative, but also not too assiduous. You don't want to torment yourself with there's an actual it's an imbalance of like religious scrupulosity. It's a over attentiveness to to virtue, to precepts, and it's not balanced. And of course the same with meditation. We're always working with that balance and having to be attended to it, because sometimes it's just so easy for the mind, until we really understand and have a really clear handle on how to work with our minds. It's just so easy to go into the imbalance of sluggishness or dullness, or the imbalance of restlessness and agitation. It's so easy to slip into that, and it's this working with these consciously with these factors of awakening is a good way to understand that balance. Same with investigation and analysis. You can just analyze something to death, and it just is so mind-numbingly boring, and it's not what wisdom is. I mean, wisdom. I say wisdom in the perspective of the Dhamma. mind is very uplifted and bright. Or one can be just not be attentive enough to, or take the care to observe, reflect, investigate, and so that wisdom. So this sense of, it's like Ajahn Chah, this the Dhamma, excuse me, the Dhamma is this just right quality, and of course the feeling of just right is not suffering, and that's where one comes back to that. That teaching on the Four Noble Truths is just so applicable in all aspects of our cultivation, and certainly in terms of these factors of awakening, is there an increase of clarity and well-being, a decrease in discontent, dissatisfaction, dis-ease? That's where one is in that experiential reflection or investigation that one is able to get a handle on how we work with this practice. Because sometimes the aspect of our ideas and ideals and the we can get all the words right, but we get all tangled up inside. We get we quote the party line, but we're still miserable. I mean, it doesn't work. So that balance where one is reaping the fruits of the practice. Yeah. In the teaching, in many places where the Buddha gives instruction on the cultivation of these 7 factors for awakening, there's an interesting angle that he repeatedly presents, and that with each quality that one is, say, when one cultivates mindfulness, but it's accompanied with 4 qualities or 4 ways that one attends or directs, and so it's applying. It's accompanied with seclusion or viveka, seclusion or withdrawing. So that one is cultivating, say, mindfulness, investigation of Dhamma, effort, energy, piti, joy, tranquility, composure, equanimity. But each quality is accompanied with viveka, so seclusion, viraka, dispassion, nirodha, cessation, vosaka, release, letting go, and that's really, to me, it's really interesting in the sense of how one approaches. These are the each of these factors of awakening, turning attention to how, how are we applying? Because it's not just, again, not just getting the letter of it, it's getting the spirit. And the spirit of the practice, the spirit of the cultivation of this path of awakening is informed with this sense of viveka, seclusion, a stepping back from our normal entanglement. And of course, the seclusion or solitude is sometimes, it's on different levels. There's a physical solitude, there's a mental solitude, and there's a solitude from the kind of the underlying strata of being and becoming, of our identity. But the movement of mind is one of a withdrawing, a pulling back, or a stepping back from the things that entangle or hold one, pin one down, and keep us, say, dissatisfied or agitated or entangled. So it's that sense of attending to a certain seclusion, not seeking engagement, or not seeking of gratification, or not seeking of stimulation, but turning to the heart for its inner peace and well-being, inner that is always there, because certainly the human impulse is always to seek either gratification or affirmation from the world around us, or when I say the world around us, from other people, social context, or the material context, or that sense of seclusion, there's a certain independence that one is. I say we're not having to rely on that external modes. And it's very interesting, because that's, of course, the Buddha emphasizes how important it is to have spiritual friendships, having good, social support with one's kalyanamitta, those spiritual companions. So it isn't, again, it's this quality of balance, where one is sort of, okay, the Buddha said to be secluded, so I'm not going to be in contact with anybody, anything, and then I'll be secluded. Well, it's not really that. We usually get miserable and oftentimes pretty weird. But there is it's a counterpoint to that constant tendency to seek gratification, stimulation, affirmation from the world around us and the people and social situations. So and of course that brings a great a source of well-being when we realize, see, within this body and mind, I've got everything that I can rely on already. Just learning how to rely on it. how to cultivate it. Of course, this is one of the incredible beauties of the Buddha's teaching. This is how well he's given us the tools for developing this path of freedom, of liberation. So this sense of seclusion, we cultivate, develop mindfulness, investigation of Dhamma, effort, joy, tranquility, composure, equanimity, with seclusion, with viveka, with viraga, sense of dispassion. And dispassion is also fading away as another way of translating it, fading away, like in our the Anapanasati Sutta, it's translated as the fading away of passion, which is kind of a neat way to express those two elements of that translation. But fading away, because oftentimes we think like dispassion is cooling, I guess settling, and that dispassion is not. It's not a dismissal of anything. It's just that, again, reflecting from a place of balance. What is it that we get fired up and caught by the kind of either the passion of desire or the passion of aversion or the passion of fear. Those are passions that grab us, and they're really they're primal, and certainly the world of it's always been a part of human existence, but it seems that the manipulation of media just hones in on those passion of desire, gaining, stimulating, gratifying, passion of kind of aversion, negativity, criticism, cynicism, the passion of fear. And one sees in society and culture of how those passions are manipulated, so that dispassion is not a dismissal or shutting out, but it's just a cooling of the qualities that cloud the mind and create these biases in the mind. There's a set of teachings that the Buddha gave. The biases or the leanings of the mind, and it's this sort of biased with desire, biased with aversion, biased with delusion, biased with fear. Those are the biases that the mind it's pushed over, it leans, it gets and it loses its balance. And so that being able to, that conscious cultivation of, say, of dispassion, of fading away of that kind of pull and sort of see, well, what's actually going on here? What's actually for my own benefit and the benefit of others? What is it that brings happiness and well-being? What is it that brings peace and clarity? Because those are the things that have a lasting benefit. What is it that it's like the idiom that Ajahn Chai used of like that, our real home. What is our real home? Of course, our real home is peace, liberation, freedom. That's our real home. Having a true refuge in wisdom, compassion, in purity. That's our real home. But we get booted out of our real home when we get lean out, get caught up in biases and passions. So this sense of dispassion, conscious cultivation of dispassion, bringing dispassion to this cultivation of these 7 factors of awakening. The other quality, the third quality that the Buddha mentions is in nirodha, or cessation. And it's similar, how do we let things cease? How do we, and this is where patience is so important. In the sense of the willingness to be present, like our impulses of desire, of aversion, of confusion, of fear, the impulses are there. But what quality is useful for helping us to free the heart, or and that turning attention to cessation, to ending, and you realize that whatever arises has the nature to cease. That's the nature of all things, whether it's physical, material, internal, external, the moods of the mind, thoughts, ideas. It's all, if it arises, it ceases. But drawing attention to that sense of ceasing, of ending. And there's a chant of verses that are repeated over and over again in the Buddha speaking about impermanence, and in their ending is peace, and it's really there's a deep satisfaction and peace when we're able to allow our attention to stay with something and let it cease, and then not be compelled to be recommitting to it or getting entangled in it. Just paying attention to the ceasing. And one can do that with just, very simple things. Just paying attention to the ending of an in-breath or an out-breath, just on moment-to-moment basis. Or recognizing when a particular train of thought comes up, and then to bring mindfulness and care to it, and then allow it to cease and pay attention to that feeling. Because there's a liberating quality to recognize that when something ceases, we don't have to just be intimidated by the apparent emptiness of something ceasing. Because we're always filling the void. We're always looking for something else, something more, and that goes with thoughts and emotion and this fundamental feeling of being, and we're compelled to keep filling that void, and that keeps us off balance and keeps us dissatisfied, keeps us discontent. So that sense of paying attention to that ceasing and ending. Another angle of that is an equally valid translation of the word nirodha. Its most common translation is cessation, but it has an equally valid translation of non-arising. Like paying attention to the non-arising of a reaction, a non-arising of desire, non-arising of becoming. Because oftentimes we spend a lot of time chasing after our thoughts and feelings and the habits that we have of greed, hatred, and delusion. We go around trying to stamp them out, and it gets tiring. But to pay attention to the non-arising, you realize, well, that is always present. And then the heart starts to really be filled and satisfied with this quality. Oh, I don't have to create and become and be and it's just, there is this awareness, there is this quality of knowing, there is this heart of fulfillment already. Why do I have to? Why do we do? I can actually be attentive to the non-arising, and that's a doorway into awakening, into peace. And so that quality, and that the last quality, vosaka, is translated as release, as letting go, but it's always in the word, and I don't understand Pali enough to know, but it's always in context of the letting go or release of the sense of self, the sense of identity and identification with me and mine. So that sense of that relinquishment of self, because that's the crux of where we keep suffering. It's, we don't suffer because of the trees and mountains or the weather or the whatever. I mean, it's the me that is such a burden. And so that being able to, willing to release, and so all those qualities, so that sense of cultivation of this awakening. We've got the tools, the Buddha's given us this path, and to be experimenting, investigating, interested in how this process works. And so as we do that, there'll be more, say, confidence. So that this how do you say this? These teachings, these factors of awakening. Again, it's qualities of balance. It's qualities of cycles that get feed on each other. It can be a linear, but it's all. Those are all valid approaches. It's just turning attention, cultivating, developing, learning how to work with that. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
We'll close with the verses of Sharing an Aspiration in English, page 33.